Hi, my name is Amy Haywood. I work for the Delaware Department of Corrections as a vocational instructor at the Baylor Women's Correctional Institution.
And I'm Major Pete Sawyer with the Delaware State Police. We're both proud members of Delaware's Law Enforcement for Special Olympics.
Today's training focuses on fundraising initiatives we've brought to the state of Delaware.
These correctional fundraising initiatives are something you may want to try in your home state.
Before we begin, we wanted to show you our success in Delaware with prison fundraising.
These initiatives have been held in two facilities, a women's facility and the largest men's facility in the state. And as you can see, it's really raised quite a bit of money. Basically, the premise is pretty simple. We're selling food items to correctional inmates and staff and using the profits to raise funds for Special Olympics.
Before you get started, the first step is to get buy-in from your stakeholders.
So, there's a number of folks that you want to get involved in this before you get started. Starting with local Special Olympics program leadership. That could be your torch run liaison, the executive director, anybody at the program that you work closely with the other fundraising initiatives that you do throughout the year. Also, your torch run program director and the executive committee. I'm sure each program has its own separate way of deciding what fundraisers they're going to pursue and what fundraisers they're not going to pursue. I think they'll find that this one is a lot of return for not so much investment.
And it's very important that you reach out to your local administration, whoever that may be, the sheriff, warden, commissioner.
And it's going to be important to let these folks know what's in it for them. Of course, we're raising money for Special Olympics, which everybody knows is a good cause, very highly supported by law enforcement. But there's also a community relations aspect, making the facility and the department look good by giving back to the community, as well as a rehabilitation aspect. Many of these offenders are going to be back out in the community, some sooner rather than later, and what better way to get them integrated with a great organization.
Another important stakeholder would be the vendors. You have to reach out to a number of vendors to see if they're willing to work with you. A number of them will, because it's an opportunity for them to enhance their community footprint, as well as they get to have a large order placed that day.
Yeah, so it's win-win for everybody involved.
How do you make it happen? It's pretty easy. Find a local vendor that's willing to work with you. We've happened to use Chick-fil-A, Krispy Kreme, and other local vendors close to the facility. And then once we meet with the vendor, we negotiate with them. We set a date and time that will work both for them and us at the facility. Then we just post a flyer in the institution. We facilitate a sign-up method, and then we reconcile the funds and pay the vendor.
And once we have the amount that the vendor is going to charge us, we decide on a markup to determine how much money we're going to make, with the goal to raise as much money as possible, but make it a reasonable price point that the inmates can afford it with the money they have in their commissary accounts, or whatever method your facility uses to allow the inmates to make purchases. So you've received approval to conduct this fundraiser. You've selected a vendor. You've put up your sign-up sheets. You've figured out how much product you're going to need. You've reconciled the inmates' accounts or whatever method they use to purchase items. And it's time to pick the day to distribute the items. Some things to consider when you're distributing. How many days will you need? In Delaware, we're able to distribute everything in one day in the smaller women's-only facility. In the largest men's facility in the state, distribution is spread over 4 or 5 days for smaller windows of time. Speaking of time, you want to pick a time that's least disruptive to the facility. Obviously, you want to avoid time when inmates are moving, or when you do counts, or when they're going to court, or anything like that. You want to make this as undisruptive as possible. You're also going to need volunteers to help distribute. Whether you travel around to the different parts of the facility to distribute, or you bring everybody to 1 or 2 central locations. Volunteers can be members of the law enforcement torch run movement. They can be other employees and officers at the facility. And we've also brought athletes to come in and greet the inmates as they're receiving their product, and everybody seems to enjoy that.
You can't forget about the importance of a release contingency, a plan in place to deal with inmates that have either been released or otherwise unavailable, court, discipline, etc. At my facility, we post clearly on the order form that funds are non-refundable. If an inmate is away at court or other sanctioned absence, we hold their order until they return. If they are released, they have until 4 p.m. to pick up their product. Most never do, though. Those on administrative sanctions prohibiting privileges simply forfeit their product. Don't forget about the condiments either. Most places will provide ketchup, sauces, and such. Just make sure you remember to ask beforehand. We suggest providing a set number of condiment packages to avoid any confusion during distribution. Now my favorite part, telling your story and thanking everyone involved. We like to use social media. Facebook, we have the Delaware Department of Correction website and Facebook page. We have Delaware Law Enforcement for Special Olympics and Special Olympics Facebook page. And don't forget about Twitter. We also like to reach out to our local media, radio stations, and other venues that we can reach out to.
Also, I'm sure your Special Olympics program and your torch run programs have newsletters and email blasts letting people know about what's going on. Great way to get this word out through them. And don't forget to recognize the volunteers, whether it's a thank you email or a shout out in your story. They really appreciate it and it keeps them coming back.
And especially thank the athletes that attend your fundraiser, because essentially they are the ambassadors of our mission. This is an example of the pizza fundraiser that raised over $9,000.
In this one, we had multiple products, pizza and Girl Scout cookies.
At this particular fundraiser, we were fortunate enough to have 2 of our athletes, and we presented them with a check over $1,000.
At yet another event, we were joined by a Special Olympics family, who were also part of the Department of Corrections family. The Corrections Commissioner and other dignitaries were able to join us that day as well. We hope you've enjoyed this brief presentation on how to successfully plan and host a correctional facility fundraiser.
Every charitable act makes a difference in the lives of our athletes.